cool. Let's just shrink that. Beautiful. Oh, this is AI art that I did when I was toying around with it and having fun. I got a corgi and a meat steak. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I'm an idiot. It was fun though. All right, let's do this. Your desktop is so clean, Joe. Consider you're the kind of man who doesn't ever sort trinkets or heroes. I thought your desktop would be cluttered. No, I hate a cluttered desktop so much. Okay. Alright, let's do it. Alright, so we're starting off with Diablo 4 here. Season of Blood is... So this is the Season 2 announcement. You always know it's a good sign when they announce the Season 2 announcement, roughly halfway through Season 1? That's how you know Season 1's going real well right now. I mean, it's going okay, but it's not going great, is the thing. Anyway. So they got a little trailer, they got some announcement stuff. Which should we watch first? Trailer or the announcement stuff? Let's watch the trailer first.
It started small.
Okay.
Nameless people that no one would miss. Dead. Discarded.
Something wrong with those people.
Torn open. The church ignored the killings.
That's
Even
because we were busy
fear
killing them. It's tough out there, you know.
The bodies. The desperate and the brave fought to end the corruption. But they were too late.
Turns out somebody had locked them up for a reason. Cool.
It changed them.
Gnarly.
Killed them.
Guy's missing his leg.
Brought them back. Hungry. I have fought this plague a long time. We need something different. A survivor.
We need something different.
With all of their strengths and none of our weaknesses. Someone unexpected.
The hell is that? Is that the torso of one of the... Must be a barbarian.
And they'll never see you come.
Are they gonna... No, they're not gonna... No, they're not gonna show... Because they wouldn't be able to show it in Germany if they did. Yeah, okay. Fate Blood.
Track them. Hunt them.
Wait, are any of these new enemy? Hold on. Where the hell does that keep... Stop it. What are these? Those are just ghouls. They have a particle effect, though. Anything new? Hold on, let's slow this down a little. Playback speed. Let's go half. Oh, that's unpleasant. Yeah, those are just ghouls with extra particle. So that's what they did for Malignant. They just took regular things and gave them an extra particle effect. Well, alright. Sure. Okay. Fair enough. Nothing new so far, enemy-wise. That's a cannibal. Okay, so those were, what are they called? The sword vampires. The ones who stab you and you're CC'd for 5 seconds while they steal your blood. They're real fun. Revenants. And one of the floaty dudes. Okay, so far, it's all the same enemies, they've just got a particle effect on them.
In the realm of darkness, we are the beacon of light.
Was that new? That might have been something new.
Pierce through the hearts of the damned.
Either that or just a big ghoul, I'm not sure.
We
Oh, let's take a look here. What was that dude?
pierce through the hearts of the damned.
Yeah, Hearts of the Damned, I get it. Alright. He put his arms up right away. Alright, well that was the trailer. I mean, the first half of it was cool, it was artsy, it was grim, it was gory, vampire-y. Alright, cool. that was enough to pull me into what they were talking about. But then, like, we just see we got the Malignant problem. What's new? Let's see if they cover that up here. One of the problems with D4 right now is monster variety isn't enough for how big the game is. Like, in D2, we have sufficient monster variety for a game like D2 or a game like Path of Exile that's a bit smaller in scope of, like, where you're going to go and what you're going to do. Or not what you're going to do. Path of Exile definitely has more what you're going to do's, but, like, just area. You end up seeing the same enemies for a long period of time because the game world is so big that they can't uniquely populate it. So enemies you see in Area 1, you're going to see in Area 5. And it's like, ah, yes, these again. We have changed our enemy type almost zero. There's quite a few enemy, but the play space is so big that you see all of them pretty much right from the get-go, with a few holdbacks like the cannibals and whatnot. And the cathedral people. I can't remember what their faction's called right now. The Jalopa's fine. Oh, yeah, definitely fine. You love how TZ never stops arriving, perpetual arrival. Coming in over and over. TZ is perpetually stuck in the loop. TZ's looping. Real good, real hard. Alright, so what are we actually getting? A Fang threat emerges from the shadows in our second season, Wanderer. And so, when all those things were dying in the cutscene, that was our character. That's why they didn't show the character. Because it was supposed to be your character, or what you envision as your character, because you're going to create a new one for the new season. That's why they didn't show it. It's you. You were the secret weapon. Alright, so Season of Blood will begin on October 17th. Yeah. Wait, is there any gap between the end of Season 1 and start of Season 2? Only a couple of days, if any. Okay. At the behest of their Dark Master, a newly turned army of ravenous vampires has set their sights on Sanctuary. It's interesting that they would pick probably the most frustrating enemy faction to fight against for their Season 2 enemy. You got the vampire magusses teleporting all over the place, healing. You got the Revenants with their long-ass CC. Yeah, sure, it's dodgeable if you see it coming, but there's so much chaos on the screen half the time, you can't see it. Between your particle effects, the enemy particle effects, the number of enemies, dead bodies flying everywhere, half the time you can't see their little sword wind up. Oh, the ghouls are fine, the bats are fine, nothing wrong with them, they're just fodder enemy that explodes in a satisfying manner. I actually kind of like fighting swarms of ghouls and bats, it's very satisfying. What else is there? The Blood Bishop, he's actually kind of an interesting enough boss. I don't mind the Blood Bishop. What else is there? I mean, those are the main units. Then they kind of typically lump in the werewolves with them as well, because, you know, horror monsters, werewolves, vampires. So, where one appears, both of them usually appear. Anyway, so it's interesting they picked, like, the worst faction. Most irritating faction to fight against for Season 2. Alright. You must learn to be a hunter, your fate depends... You must learn to hunt the hunter. Your fate depends on it. Sure. Season Blood will introduce a new quest line. Hopefully it's better than the quest line for Season 1. The quest line for Season 1 was limp dick and uninteresting. I'm also hoping the lady they have as your quest liaison, if you will, is a hell of a lot more interesting than the last guy. Because my god, was he boring. Vampiric powers to wield against their originators, so... Alright, let's extrapolate that for a second. Right now, you've got Malignant Hearts. You socket those into your rings or whatever, and it changes some effect. Well, some of them change the effect of your skills, some of them just give you dumb. Like, the Sork ones are all just passive modifiers. The Sork ones are extremely boring. Like, if you use an element, you gain a damage bonus. And if you use all 3 elements, you gain the damage bonus 3 times. Cool, it's boring. I don't even get to see that. Like, there's no... Like... Meanwhile, necromancers get their tendrils and auto-casting on the bodies and like, necromancers definitely won the Malignant Hearts. Like, they won big. I kind of wish they had gone that bold with the other classes. Alright, so vampiric powers. It could be something similar to that. More malignant power stuff, you know, things that alter the way your abilities work. I mean, it's a decent mechanic. It's been relatively popular, even if there were big winners and big losers in that department. Hopefully, you don't have things quite as broken as Barber going forward. Alternatively, what this could be is borrowed power. That is to say, new skills, vampire-themed skills that you can earn and use against the enemy, like brand new skills. The problem with this is skill bar economy is not healthy right now. Like, there's just not enough space on the skill bar. So what it could be is they give you an extra slot now where you can put one vampiric power. I mean, that could be interesting, I guess. But I feel like it's going to have the same kind of problem we have now, and that it's too little for a season, you know? It's not enough as a season mechanic. It's too simple. Not enough meat. Like, oh good, I get one extra power. It's probably going to have a long cooldown. I'll get to use it every couple of enemy packs. Great. Awesome. Can I just have more skill slots? Against the originators, 5 additional... Okay, 5 additional endgame bosses. Can I just read that? Here's the infographic. Let's just look at the infographic. Alright, 5 endgame bosses. This is apparently one of them. It looks like a modified Magus. Okay. Alright, I mean, that's fair. Alright. He kind of looks cool. You know, I kind of like him. New and returning foes for additional endgame challenges. New, okay, like him, and returning. So, they mentioned that they wanted to bring some of the story bosses in as endgame bosses, like Duriel, Andariel, etc., etc. Okay. So we're probably going to see some of those finally coming in. So 5 endgame bosses. Several of them will probably stay, the ones that are from the main story. I assume the season-specific bosses... It's probably just one new boss. This is probably the new boss. Kind of like, you know, Season of Malignant had Varshan, so 1. So here's the new one. The other 4 are going to be story bosses. My guess is Andariel for sure, because she's got fleshed out mechanics. I can't remember his name. The dude who rides Cerberus starts with an A. Ashton... Ashley... Asheron, I don't know, something like that. I'm terrible with names. Sup, Olsen? Face looks derpy. Yeah, I think that's what I like about it, though. The face does look a little oddly proportioned and whatnot, but I think that's what I like. It's almost like somebody's wearing a skin suit instead of... It's not actually like the... Men in Black. The first Men in Black. You know, when the alien comes down, hits the farm... sucks out the insides of the farmer and wears his skin. That's what it reminds me of. And I think it's great. Ashbringer. Astaroth. There it is. Yeah, Astaroth. That's the one. So it's probably going to be Astaroth, like Andariel. What were other big ones? The Granny on the Mountain would be a cool one. I don't know if she's going to make it back, though. So it's kind of like he's just wearing a skin suit because he's got all the folds around the neck and everything. So I kind of like that. I actually like the design here. I think it's neat. Better target farming of uniques and uber uniques. I mean, this is cool. Like, yeah, because considering uniques are basically your main build identifiers now. Like Sorks have Raiment of the what is it? Raiment of the Infinite or whatever, the teleport one. I mean, your Sork is kind of ass until you get that. There's no way about it. Like, Sorks aren't great in general, and they're even worse when you don't have your Raiment. And pretty much every Sork build uses it, I think. So, being able to target form, that's going to be huge. And Uber Uniques. Well, okay, so there's an implication here. Why mention Uber Uniques and target farming if it's still like a 1 in a million, not even 1 in a million, it's like 1 in 100 million drop chance? Like, who cares? So unless they're increasing the odds of getting them through this target farming, I'm assuming the bosses are how you do that. If they give the bosses semi-realistic drop rates for Uber Uniques, that would be huge. Like, the bosses right now just aren't worth doing past your first kill because there's no incentive to do it. So if they drop Uber Uniques, Brilliant. Now we have a reason to do them. Especially if we can trade. We still need trading. Well, full trading. It'd be cool if the true boss was some sort of leech piloting this dude like a meat suit mech. Yeah, that'd be kind of neat. Yeah. There's some, something like anything. Anything more than what we got with Roshan would be great. So, okay. Renown rewards. Rewards will carry over when completed on any prior character beyond Altars of Lilith and map discovery. Includes potion charges, skill points, obol cap upgrades, and oh, thank God, I don't have to do the renown grind again. Alright, I'm going to be honest with you, chat. If I had to do the renown grind again, I wasn't going back for Season 2. Straight up. That was the worst part of Season 1. I hated it. It took forever. It honestly killed my steam for Season 1. I completed the renown grind and then was like, It killed all steam that I had. I hated it. It was awful. It's not good. I'm glad to see it finally going. Hallelujah. Good decision by Blizzard there. Or pardon me, Activision. Blizzard's dead. Remember that, chat. Alright, anyway. Decent enough. What else we got here? Okay, is that all just down here? I'm just going to read down here. If I need more clarification, I'll look up to see if they... Status effects. Okay. Updated elemental resistance system. Resistances are currently broken in the game. They're basically worthless. They're supposedly making them worth something now. Cool. I don't know why they thought they had to reinvent the wheel on that. The resistance system worked just fine in Diablo 2, Diablo 3, Path of Exile. I don't know why they thought they had to reinvent the wheel there. It works in every game that uses it. Just use the old way. Don't fix what ain't broke. Vulnerable, overpower, and critical strike damage updates. Okay. So, right now, overpower's whatever. Overpower doesn't matter. Aside from builds that can force proc it, it's completely irrelevant. That's probably what they're going to address, because right now it's just pointless. And vulnerable is a problem because... one of the problems with Sork? They don't have good application of vulnerability. Vulnerability single-handedly kills build diversity and variety because you have to be able to apply vulnerable. The game is balanced around it. There's no two ways about it. Vulnerable is a terrible thing and should not have been in the game. I doubt they're going to outright remove it, but hopefully they do something meaningful to change it so it's less oppressive. Like, the fact that it scales, I think, is the big problem. It should just be a nice little bonus on top. Kind of like Fortify only gives you like a 10% damage reduction. Vulnerable should just give you a nice solid little 10% multiplicative damage bonus. That's it. That's all. It's a nice little cherry on top if you can apply it, but it's not goddamn mandatory for your build to function. I don't know why they decided it should have scalable damage, why they decided it should be, and its scalable damage should be in the multiplicative bucket. It was just an awful idea all around. Okay, gem and stash. Gems no longer take up inventory space. We knew this was coming. It's a good change. Solid. I think they said they're going in the material storage. Huge. Or something like that. Stash can be searched and filtered. This is just something that should have been in... Like, both of these should have been in the game in the first place. I don't know why they're touting them as... Like... here's the bullet marks for what makes this season interesting, and you should... No, they should have just been in the game. These are not season drivers. If this is the content of the season, we're in trouble. Hopefully this season has more meat and potatoes than Malignant did. It worked in Diablo 1 as well. Yeah, like, don't ever break what's not... Like, or don't ever fix what's not broken. If you take something that's fixed and you break it, that's a problem. Don't do that. Alright. That was it? Oh dear. More efficient inventory management. Paragon, okay. Changes the functionality of status effects. Critical strike damage. How are they changing the functionality? Not just the numbers, the functionality. They're not just balancing them, they're changing them. Functionality is the key word here. What are they going to do to critical strike damage? How is that going to change? Interesting. Okay. Well, that's something to ponder about. Like, right now, part of the problem with the game also is that damage just inflates to absurd levels. Like, people complain, all the bosses are too easy. You just walk in and die. They die. Okay? Well, you know, part of the problem is just how much damage scales. They scaled it back before Season 1, but people hated that. Well, partly because people hate change, and also because they didn't buff anything that needed buffed alongside. They just kind of went hardcore on the nerf. Actually, they did do some buffs. They did some damage buffs, didn't they? Yeah, they did. All right, well, whatever. Either way, if you want bosses to be meaningful content, they gotta rein the damage in so you're not doing 100 million damage per second. Like, that's just how it is. You're not gonna have meaningful bosses and 100 million damage per second. Actually, Path of Exile does, but that's just because they ballooned and inflated all the numbers to insane levels. And that's just not a healthy way to do it. Anyway, that was the Diablo 4 update. There's definitely some good stuff in there that's going to be generally healthy for the game. The game is moving in the right direction. My concern is just that it's moving there a little too slowly, and Path of Exile 2 is on the horizon. And they really got to figure out some way to make seasons meatier. Like, these seasons, maybe this one's good. I don't really have, I don't know. What they showed in the trailer was barely anything. What they've mentioned here, it's pretty bare bones overall, but we'll see. Maybe there's more meat to it than it looks like. But their seasons have been like, the players like vultures picking the last vestivals of flesh off of a long picked over corpse. The lions came in, ate their share. The hyenas came in, ate their share, and now the vultures are just like, there's just a couple stringy pieces of meat here and there. There's some sinew over there. Damn it, Jerry already got the Creepy Dave. Creepy Dave already got the giblet, the one piece of succulent meat on this corpse that something missed. It was down near its ass. I guess nobody was brave enough to go find it, except for Creepy Dave. He got it. People hate nerfs because numbers go up equal good, numbers go down equal bad. Well, yeah, but that's monkey brain stuff. Obviously, you can't design and develop around people's monkey brains. They're just going to have to deal with it at some inevitable point for the good of the game. You want bosses to be meaningful, you got to constrain and manage the numbers. Because right now, it's more to say you should have your target numbers. I think we talked about this the last time we looked at Diablo 4 stuff. Ideally, and this is something Dark Souls does, this is something Path of Exile kind of does. Now, whether intentional on Path of Exile's case, I don't know. But it is definitely intentional on From Software's part. And they pretty much have put on the masterclass of designing difficult boss fights that are engaging. The boss fight, you don't want it to be too short because that's not a fight. There's nothing there. There's no meat and potatoes. There's no room for errors. There's no room for success or combat. No, it's just, if it's too short, it's not interesting. It's boring. You run in, you do your thing, you run out. But on the inverse, if it's too long, fight fatigue sets in, and now you're being punished for mistakes you weren't making before, but the fight is just dragged on for so long that you can't help but you're just starting to make mistakes. The fatigue is setting in. You've been clicking all this time, all the buttons, all the thinking. The fight is ramped up over time in difficulty as well, probably. So you spend 5 minutes playing perfectly, and then suddenly, like, you're only halfway done with the fight. You're already into the last phase, and the last fight just turns into a shit show and you die. So, From Software have been very good about constraining the length of fights to just a couple of minutes. And they're very intense minutes, usually. Most fights, depending on exactly how hard you min-max, are typically between Well, I mean, if you're going like hardcore, you know everything, you know exactly what buffs, you know, like expert players who are on their 100th playthrough, they can probably beat the bosses in like 30 seconds. I've seen Dark Souls 2 playthroughs where that's exactly what you do. You just go in with the right buffs, the biggest giga weapon you can get, and you basically two-tap the boss. But generally speaking, on earlier playthroughs before the game has been completely figured out and turned into a formula, you know, fights typically last anywhere between 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes on the easier side, you know, 5 to maybe 8 minutes on the really difficult side. And that's it. That's the length of your fight. It's not going to go on any longer. And even in the long ones, they usually give you brief windows of respite. Like phase changes where you can just calm down for a second, stop clicking, and just take a breather, and then get back into it, which kind of helps offset that fatigue a little. Good examples of this are the Nameless King. You've got the first phase where you fight him on the bird, and then you get that little brief window where you can just relax for a second, and then you fight him in earnest. Or what was it, Ariandel or whatever, the painting, Dark Souls 3, the three phase, like what is it, three phases? It's her originally when she's invisible, and then it's her and the big dude, and then it's her in Giga fuck you mode, basically, with her frost spells and everything, frost scythe. And between each of those, you get a reprieve, you get a breather. Although the one between the second and third phase is kind of a middle finger as well, because they make you think you won the fight, and then they pull the third phase out of nowhere. Hello, Hjorn. Lady Freed, yeah, that's the one. And Father Ariandel, yeah, okay, there it is. And Lady, yeah, exactly. But that is a very long fight. That fight, even with the breaks in between, is an example of a fight that's too long. And as far as I'm aware, like, they didn't put any super duper long fights into the game like that afterwards. As far as I'm aware. I think even they realized this is too long. So, but that's kind of what Diablo 4 needs to figure out right now, is where do we want that number and how do we get everyone into that range? And it looks like they've kind of decided on the, like, 3 to 8 minute mark. They want everyone to fall within 3 and 8 minutes. Doesn't matter where you fall within that, as long as you're in that, it's good. And I kind of agree with that, that's fine. I would honestly argue that 3 to 6 minutes would be better. Like, an 8-minute fight is long, is without reprieve. But anyway, and most of Path of Exile's boss fights seem to fall into the same category. They usually take anywhere between, like, 2 and 6 minutes, I believe. Maybe the most brutal endurance fight in all of Souls. Exactly. And even they were like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do that again, because I don't think they've put in a fight that long since. Not that I can think of, anyway. Sekiro, actually, they did with Sekiro. Sword Saint Ishin. No, well, no, they didn't. Sword Saint Ishin was a lot of phases, but the phases were all relatively short. They were a short but high intensity. So it was still a 3-phase fight, but it was, or was it 4 phases? I think it depends what ending you go for. Anyway, Sword Saint Ishin was also a pretty grueling fight, but each section was a bit shorter, typically, than fighting Freed. But anyway, that's what D4 needs to figure out with their numbers and their multiplication of damage and all that jazz. And it looks like they're taking a stab at that. We'll see. The player base will piss and moan, as they always do. That's what player bases do. It doesn't matter what you do, they're going to piss and moan. But a better game is a better game, even if the players don't like it right out of the gate. So hopefully they do something good with this, and we'll see if it stands the test of time. Long-ass fights can be incredibly rewarding, but not when you have to do them many times over. When you have to spend 5 minutes just fighting your way back to the part you failed at. Yeah. That was my problem with Sister Freed. The first phase, once you've got it down, is just a time waste. Like, you get to the point where phase 1, the gimmick, you figured it out, it's not a problem, it just takes time because it's such a slow phase. And then you got phase 2, where the real fight actually begins. In the case of Sister Freed and you know, old Big Daddy, once you beat phase 1 for the first time, you should just stop doing phase 1. Once you've figured out the gimmick and you beat the phase, there's nothing stopping you from beating it repeatedly. At that point, it's just a waste of time.